The Aberdeen Scandal was a military sexual assault scandal in 1996 at Aberdeen Proving Ground, a United States Army base in Maryland. Ultimately, 12 drill instructors were charged with sex crimes, 4 were sentenced to prison, while 8 others were discharged or received non-judicial punishment. Additionally, letters of reprimand were issued to Aberdeen's commanding general and 3 other senior officers. Charges brought against the officers Captain Derrick Robertson and Sergeant Delmar Simpson and Nathaniel Beach were accused of participating in the Army's biggest sex abuse scandal on record. Robertson and Simpson faced rape charges and Beach was charged with adultery. Army Secretary Toga West accused those charged of abusing their power, and ordered all soldiers to undergo sexual harassment training so they could learn the Army's zero-tolerance policy towards sexual harassment. The men accused felt that statements made by West and other officials within the Army were prejudging the case and would result in an unfair trial. Robertson's attorney, Jerome Murphy, asked the judge, military judge Linda Webster, to enact a gag order on West and others, but she deferred judgment. However, she did order prospective jurors not to follow media coverage of the case to avoid interference with their judgment. Individuals involved in outcomes. Sergeant Delmar Simpson was held at the Marine Corps Brig, Quantico while his court-martial was pending. He was convicted of 18 counts of rape and 29 other offenses, and was sentenced to 25 years in military prison. Staff Sergeant Vernell Robinson Jr. was convicted of 19 counts involving the abuse of 5 women under his command, including sodomy, adultery, communicating a threat, obstructing justice and disobeying orders. At his court-martial, Robinson made a dramatic plea for clemency, weeping and beating his head contritely against the witness stand. Robinson was sentenced to 6 months in prison, demoted to private, forfeited all benefits, and was dishonorably discharged from the military. Captain Derrick Robertson, a 30-year-old career soldier, was the highest ranking of the defendants, serving as a company commander. He was charged with rape, forcible sodomy, adultery, indecent assault, conduct unbecoming an officer, violating a general order, and obstruction of justice. He pleaded guilty to adultery, consensual sodomy, conduct unbecoming an officer and dereliction of duty under a plea agreement with military prosecutors. His case involved 1 female soldier. Robertson was sentenced to 1 year in prison, with 8 months suspended. Staff Sergeant Herman Gunter was charged with rape, assault, adultery, indecent assault, sexual intercourse by fear, conspiracy to obstruct justice, obstruction of justice, violation of a general order, and cruelty and maltreatment for inappropriate sexual comments and harassment. The allegations involved 3 female trainees. The Army subsequently dropped the 2 counts of sexual intercourse by fear. At court-martial, Gunter was acquitted of 4 of the remaining 7 counts of indecent assault, adultery, cruelty and maltreatment, and engaging in a forbidden social relationship with one of the 2 women, but was convicted of inappropriate behavior by trying to hug and kiss another woman and of obstructing an investigation by asking both women not to speak with investigators. Gunter was sentenced to a reprimand and to demotion by 2 grades. Sergeant First Class William Jones, a drill instructor assigned to B Company of the 16th Ordnance Battalion, was charged with 1 count of indecent assault involving an ex-trainee, a civilian at the time of the alleged offense, 1 count of drunkenness on duty, and 7 counts of fraternizing with recruits that involve 6 female trainees. The Army ultimately dropped the charges, choosing to pursue discharge proceedings instead. Sergeant First Class Theron Brown, an instructor, was charged with violation of a general order, sodomy, adultery, making a false statement and disobeying a superior's order in connection with incidents involving 2 female trainees and 1 female civilian. Brown was discharged from the service in lieu of court-martial. Sergeant Nathaniel C. Beach, another drill instructor, was charged with violation of a superior's order, failing to obey a general order, making a false official statement, adultery, communicating a threat and fraternization with a female soldier for incidents involving two female soldiers. Beach was accused by a trainee of having sex with her and threatening to kill her if she didn't keep quiet. Charges were dropped against Beach, who faced administrative discipline rather than court-martial. Sergeant Isaiah Chestnut was initially charged with a variety of offenses involving 4 female trainees, but the Army decided not to pursue a court-martial, choosing Article 15 non-judicial punishment instead. Chestnut was ultimately permitted to resign in lieu of facing court-martial. Sergeant First Class Ronald Moffett was charged with indecent assault, indecent language, adultery, cruelty and maltreatment, and violating an order prohibiting social relationships with trainees in a case involving 4 female soldiers. Moffett agreed to be discharged in lieu of court-martial. Sergeant Tony Cross, a Gulf War veteran who had been in the Army for 14 years, was charged with adultery, sodomy, wrongfully socializing with trainees and failing to report prohibited relationships in a case involving 4 female trainees. Cross maintained his innocence, agreed to be discharged in lieu of court-martial. Major General Johnny Longhauser, the commanding general of Aberdeen Proving Ground, was allowed to take early retirement in 1997 after it was revealed that he had an adulterous affair with a civilian woman while separated from his wife. The events occurred more than 5 years before Longhauser's retirement, and before his arrival at Aberdeen. According to the New York Times, Pentagon officials stated that Longhauser appeared to be retiring partly out of disgust that his entire career would be judged on the basis of what he and others would regard as a minor dalliance. Fort Leonard Wood Scandal. A separate and unrelated scandal took place in 1996 at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri. Charges in that case were announced 5 days before the Aberdeen Scandal became public, and the 2 cases were reported by the media in tandem. According to Army officials, 22 female soldiers were involved in incidents in which 3 men, Staff Sergeant Lauren B. Taylor, Staff Sergeant Anthony S. Fore, and Sergeant George W. Blackley, Jr., were charged. Taylor pleaded guilty to failing to obey a general regulation by having consensual sex with 3 female recruits and trying to have sex with another, and admitted to improper contact with a 5th woman recruit. Taylor was discharged, demoted and sentenced to confinement. Fore pleaded guilty to failing to obey a general regulation, indecent assault, and assault and battery, and a military judge, after hearing testimony, convicting Fore of 2 additional counts of failing to obey a general regulation and indecent assault. The Army dropped several other charges. Fore was sentenced to 18 months in prison and was dishonorably discharged. Blackley was acquitted on charges of failing to obey a general regulation, indecent assault, maltreatment and showing disrespect to a fellow non-commissioned officer. Aftermath. Since the charges were filed, the U.S. Army set up a hotline to take reports of sexual harassment in the military. It has also made available many resources for soldiers who feel they have been harassed or assaulted. Supervisors were also barred from having romantic relationships with the soldiers they trained. The Army cited the fact that they cannot be sure if all relationships are consensual due to the nature of a supervisor's power over their trainees. See also References. External link. CNN. 3 soldiers arraigned in U.S. Army sex scandal. CNN. Sergeant accused in Aberdeen sex scandal speaks out. PBS NewsHour report. Vernal Robinson Jr. verdict.